Robot dogs are coming to the front lines. They can fetch, they can catch, and they can decimate any Russian troops they come across. What are these robot dogs? What can they do? And how is Ukraine using them to hunt down Russian soldiers on the battlefield? News first emerged of Ukraine using an army of robotic dogs in August 2024, right around the time that the country conducted its successful counter-invasion into Russia's Kursk Oblast. Early details about the machines came from Forbes, along with pictures. The drone dogs look a little more like freshly roasted chickens than canines, though they move far faster than that description implies. They're also not autonomous, each is operated via remote control by a soldier. But the concept is simple. Ukraine's robotic canines are the ground versions of the unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, the country has used to devastate Russian forces for much of the war. In August 2024, Ukraine had around 30 of these robot dogs, all provided by a British company named Brit Alliance. Early reports exaggerated the machine's potential somewhat. For instance, the German tabloid Bild suggested that Ukraine's new ground-based drones were capable of sniffing out Russian troops before attacking, much like a traditional attack hound would. That isn't the case. Ukraine's dog drones can't hunt, at least not in the traditional canine sense. What they can do is many of the on-the-ground operations that would typically require human soldiers. Ukraine uses its canine robots to explore inside buildings, both before and after they've been cleared out. These ground drones can infiltrate trenches and explore dense woodland where Russian soldiers might be hiding. The robot might appear to be on the hunt, and it is in a sense. The robots have built-in cameras that constantly feed live footage back to their operators, which allows Ukraine to gather intelligence in the field. Forbes also reports that the dogs are used to locate booby traps just as much as they are used to find Russian soldiers. However, they don't have any sort of special sniffing sensors. That might be a step too far for current technology. So the concept is surprisingly simple. Ukraine builds on its use of UAVs with a ground-based variant that can do things that aerial drones can't do. And operationally, the drones are very impressive. Each robot dog is capable of a maximum speed of 9 miles per hour, which it can maintain for 5 hours before its battery is drained. For context, the average runner hits speeds of around 5 to 8 miles per hour over moderate distances. Sprinters can hit speeds closer to or even above 20 miles per hour, but that's only over short distances. Ukraine's robot dogs manage 9 miles per hour consistently for 5 hours, giving them a range of around 45 miles. The drone's operator can control the device from up to 2 miles away. While that means the operator will have to follow the drone if they're to take full advantage of the robot canine's full range, it also means the operator can set up a safe radius around themselves. They stay under protection as the drone scans the area up to 2 miles in the direction the operator and their comrades want to go. Then the operator and team can move out, stop, and scan again. The dog robots are also surprisingly cheap. Each one costs between $4,400 and $8,800, depending on the version purchased. They can also be covered in German camouflage blankets that make them tough to spot with the naked eye and via thermal imaging. So not only are the drones capable of traveling over surprisingly large distances, but they can also do it without being spotted by Russian soldiers. And if Russia manages to capture one of the drones, they can't do much with it. According to United 24, all data held by the robot, including its operational commands and any intelligence inserted into it by Ukraine, can be erased instantly and remotely upon capture. It's an incredibly intelligent piece of machinery, which brings us to an obvious question: where do Ukraine's robot dogs come from? The initial batch of 30 were delivered by the UK-based business named Brit Alliance. However, a quick visit to that company's website demonstrates that they're not who you'd expect to be at the forefront of robotic innovation. Brit Alliance is a security company. It specializes in creating security and risk management solutions for private and corporate clients. Those services include offering bodyguards for VIPs and security forces who protect international shipping. Brit Alliance can also help clients with drone security, which involves using drones to conduct surveillance and offers military training. These are all very useful services. However, the company doesn't engage in robotics research. It didn't build the robot dogs Ukraine is using, but it did modify and improve them. But if that's the case, there's an obvious question to ask: who did? The answer is shocking: China. According to Forbes, military analysts have already identified Ukraine's robot dogs as being variations of the Chinese-made Unitree Go-2 Pros. The drones are considered the legged equivalents of China's unmanned quadcopters, and we get more details about what these devices are capable of from the Go-2 Pro spec sheet. According to Generation Robots, the drones have folding legs, making them easy to transport to different locations. They're powered by an ARM processor along with an AI algorithm processor that makes them capable of interpreting and carrying out the commands they receive from their operators. Ukraine's Chinese-made robot dogs can carry up to 17.5 pounds and come equipped with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth that allows them to connect to other devices. However, it's the range of the cameras and sensors that make the drones really impressive. Each comes with a high-resolution 1280 by 720 camera that has a 120-degree field of vision, allowing Ukraine to use the dogs to shoot footage of the battlefield with high quality. They have lamps installed in the front, which light the way during nighttime operations, and they come packed with special hearing sensors and microphones. The former allows Ukraine's operators to deliver basic verbal commands to the drones that the robot dogs then follow. As for the microphones, they're ideal for delivering instructions between units. Each Go2 Pro also comes with a 4D LiDAR L1 omnidirectional radar system that allows it to scan a 360 by 90 degree environment. The K9 drones can even react to the scanning data they capture by going into an automatic avoidance mode if they spot any threats. Oh, and each dog has a speaker for playing music. Still, they come from China. That's the great irony of Ukraine's robotic dogs. It's using devices created by a country that has quietly supported Russia throughout President Vladimir Putin's supposed special military operation. Since at least September 2024, Western officials have claimed that there's clear evidence that China has been supplying Russia with military attack drones. In January 2025, Radio Free Europe also reported that China was providing Russia with key chemicals Putin needed for his missiles. China is no friend to Ukraine. But now it's unwittingly providing Ukraine with powerful robot dogs that it's using to hunt down Russian soldiers. And Ukraine is among the first countries to deploy these types of drones on the battlefield. The concept of quadruped robots is much older than you might think. For instance, Boston Dynamics developed a concept dubbed Big Dog for the US Army back in 2005. That drone was designed almost to serve as a pack mule capable of carrying supplies for infantry over difficult terrain. Though Boston Dynamics created a functioning prototype, the project was eventually scrapped because its robot dogs made too much noise. Another project from the same company was dubbed Spot. The US Air Force also considered using ghost robots, which are large walking drones, to patrol US Air Force bases and even in some cases as robotic snipers. The problem with all of these drones is that public perception of them is almost always negative. There's an element of dystopia to having robot drones patrolling battlefields and military bases, so the US hasn't actively deployed any of its dog drones, even though it has the technology. Ukraine has no such qualms. It's fighting for its survival against seemingly never-ending waves of Russian soldiers, and it's going to use everything it can get its hands on to defend itself, even if its new weapons come from China and weren't even intended for military use. So Ukraine has robotic dogs that it's using to strike against Russia. The question now is who's using them? The Daily Mail discovered the answer in a March 2025 YouTube video. It revealed that these futuristic robot dogs were being deployed by Ukraine's most innovative combat unit, the Billionaire's Brigade. That unit has an interesting history. News of its existence emerged during the early months of the Ukraine war. Its leader, Vsevolod Kozymyako, is the founder and CEO of a company called Agrotrade Group, which is one of Ukraine's largest grain production and storage companies. Kozymyako isn't focused on his business anymore, as he told NPR in June 2022, "Yes, I'm a businessman, and now I'm a commander of a military unit in Ukraine." Kozymyako's Billionaire's Brigade is technically a civilian unit, funded and trained by some of Ukraine's richest people. That unit still takes orders from Ukraine's army. However, it operates independently, making it one of the most interesting paramilitary forces that the country has to offer. At the time of NPR's interview with Kozymyako, all recruits were being issued with body armor, helmets, and AK-47s. They also received drones, allowing them to monitor the battlefield during the early months of the war, before Ukraine discovered the true utility of these drones in its battle against Russia. The unit even has its own vehicles, all purchased by its wealthy backers. The Billionaire's Brigade is also a volunteer unit, technically classified as a Ukrainian territorial defense unit. Once recruits complete their training, they're given the option of heading to the front lines or leaving to go back to their old lives. NPR says that very few of those who sign up leave after training. The Daily Mail's video provides more insight into what this powerful brigade has been doing since NPR first reported on it in June 2022. It says that the Billionaire's Brigade now prides itself on being a unit that represents a template for the future of the Ukrainian military. It's certainly among the most innovative of Ukraine's frontline brigades, as demonstrated by its use of K9 drones. That innovation, combined with the glamour of being associated with Ukraine's richest people, has led to the unit evolving from its early form. It still welcomes volunteers, only now those volunteers are an interesting mix of celebrities and the best and brightest of Ukraine's officer cadets. The brigade has also been involved in some of Ukraine's most important battles. For much of the war, it's been stationed in the Kharkiv Oblast, which was one of the first regions Russia attacked during Putin's initial invasion. Kharkiv is now a shell of its former self, though Ukrainian forces still bravely defend the oblast against Russian incursions. As for the Billionaire's brigade, it led the charge back toward the Russian border during the Ukrainian Kharkiv counteroffensive that pushed Putin's initial troops back out of the city. It's still stationed in Kharkiv, where it's working alongside Ukraine's military to hold Russia at bay. The Billionaire's brigade also approaches war a little differently. Where many of Ukraine's soldiers still followed Soviet-era protocols, especially during the war's early months, the Billionaire's brigade uses a NATO-inspired approach to mission planning and execution. It prints 3D models and uses specialist software to plan its strikes. It's also adopted a 7-stage decision-making process that allows it to plan, rehearse, and then execute its strikes so that they're almost perfect. This is why the brigade considers itself the template for Ukraine's future military. The addition of its new dog drones is just another example of how the Billionaire's brigade constantly pushes Ukrainian tactics forward. We come to 2 more questions. Why choose robot dogs ahead of UAVs, and just how does the Billionaire's brigade use its canine drones? The first question is interesting. UAVs seem like they will be more effective than robot dog drones because of their ability to fly. That ability eliminates terrain issues and gives UAVs more freedom. However, there are issues that UAVs can't confront that Ukraine's robot dogs can handle. Take the freedom aspect as an example. Yes, a UAV can cover more ground quickly in a large and open area. However, there are many locations where a UAV can't operate. Take tightly packed buildings as an example. While UAVs have special rotors that allow them to operate inside buildings, many are too large and too loud to be truly effective. The same goes for trenches. UAVs can enter trenches, but they're also easy to see and hear when they're in such enclosed spaces. Ukraine's robot dogs don't have these problems. Their ability to walk on the ground allows them to infiltrate buildings and trenches far more easily than UAVs. In the case of the Go-2 Pros Ukraine is using, the cameras built into the drones make them ideal for reconnaissance. Their sensors can also detect incoming threats. A robot dog with appropriate camouflage can quickly fade into the background by folding its legs and hunkering down, allowing it to monitor or evade Russian soldiers in tight quarters. There's also the issue of booby traps to consider. Finding those traps has become one of the most important and dangerous tasks facing Ukraine's army. As the New York Times reports, Russia has taken to installing these devastating traps wherever it can. Fields are laced with pressure pads and tripwires that activate explosive mines when they're triggered. The same tactics are used to make clearing buildings and even civilian backyards more dangerous for Ukrainian soldiers. A UAV can avoid these booby traps by simply flying over them. Robot dogs will set them off. And that's often more valuable to soldiers on the ground. While they can use their UAVs to scout open locations for traps, they can send their robot dogs into buildings and through fields. Troops follow the dog's path, at a safe distance, to navigate their way through the Russian traps. And if the robot dog triggers a trap, that's fine too. It's just saved a Ukrainian life by triggering a booby trap before a soldier found it. Plus, the drones are so cheap. Remember that even the most expensive ones only cost around $8,000, but they can be replaced easily. Ukraine's robot dogs are put in harm's way so that Ukraine's soldiers can take fewer risks. There's also the drone's carrying capacity to consider. Around 17 pounds may not seem like the heaviest weight in the world, but Ukraine's robot drones certainly don't act as pack mules in the same way America's Big Dog was intended. However, that carrying capacity is more than enough for Ukraine to send first aid supplies and ammunition between units on the battlefield. Think of it like a robot courier in these instances, and thanks to the robot's legs, it's able to traverse terrain that Ukraine's small wheeled and tracked robots can't handle. Again, that makes it useful for transporting supplies in urban combat environments and similarly difficult terrain. Ukraine's robot dogs could, in theory, be turned into deadly weapons. Strap a few grenades or an explosive charge onto one, and suddenly you've got a stealthy bomb, capable of sneaking into a building or trench, getting close to Russian soldiers, and detonating on command. Military experts have floated the idea, with former consultant Valery Ryabik suggesting that converting robot dogs into suicide drones could be a game-changer on the battlefield. But here's the catch. The company that actually supplies these machines, Brit Alliance, insists they were built to save lives, not take them. Their managing director has been clear. The BAD-2 model is designed for clearing mines and spotting booby traps, not carrying out attacks. Whether Ukraine will stick to that mission or modify them for combat remains to be seen. Ultimately, it comes down to automating frontline tasks that soldiers would have previously had to risk their lives to complete. Better yet for Ukraine, their robot dogs are somewhat modular. As one unnamed soldier told the Kyiv Post in September 2024, this product serves as a base platform into which any relevant technologies can be integrated. War is evolving, and those who adapt and seize new opportunities will gain an edge over the enemy. Ukraine's robot dogs certainly add an edge to the battlefield, but the Billionaire's Brigade isn't relying on them alone. When speaking to the Daily Mail, one brigade member described how they use a variety of unmanned ground vehicles, explaining, "We usually control them remotely and try to do it as far from the battlefield as possible for the safety of our operations." He then showcased how these larger wheeled and tracked drones handle logistics, from transporting ammunition to reducing risks for soldiers. It's replacing humans, making their jobs easier and safer, and also replacing other vehicles that are more vulnerable and more costly. As for the robot dog, it's part of the mix but plays a different role. Unlike other drones used by the brigade, this particular model was not developed in Ukraine, a detail the unit was careful to point out. The only question left is simple: what's next for Ukraine's robotic dogs? The soldier who spoke to the Daily Mail offers some clues. "They manufacture it in Ukraine. The majority of them are upgraded and modified by us before we use them," he tells the outlet. That comment clues us into Ukraine's future plans. While the first batches of these canine robots were made in China and modified and delivered to Ukraine by a British security company, the next iterations will come from Ukraine itself. That was confirmed by Ukraine's Defense Minister Rustem Umerov in February 2025. Ukraine is increasing the production of these systems and deploying full-fledged robotic units as part of the combat brigades of the armed forces on the front line. Translation: robotic dogs aren't going to be limited to the Billionaire's Brigade for much longer. That brigade served as the template for what was possible with these innovative drones. Now, Ukraine is going to make its own and roll them out to the rest of its forces. Unmanned ground systems have proven their ability to perform a number of combat missions, to implement offensive and defensive operations, to provide logistical support to units, to evacuate the wounded from the battlefield, and to mine and demine territories, Umerov added. Our goal is to create an army where innovative technologies help to perform the most dangerous tasks, saving the lives of our defenders. Therein lies the most important purpose of Ukraine's robotic dogs. And according to Umerov, we're going to see a lot more of them on the battlefield as the Ukraine war progresses deeper into 2025. But what do you think about Ukraine's brilliant robotic dogs? Can you think of any other uses for these innovative drones? What other new technologies could Ukraine integrate into its armed forces to fight against Russia? Let us know in the comments, and thank you for watching the video.